Welcome to Creative Piecemeal. I'm Tammy Takeishi, a board-certified music therapist. Join me each week as a new guest from across the fine and creative arts spheres shares struggles, triumphs, laughs, words of wisdom, and more in authentic, thought-provoking, and inspiring interviews. Hello, and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. I am very excited to be joined by my personal favorite celebrity chef, Ellie Krieger. Ellie Krieger is a registered nutritionist and dietitian, and she's the host of several TV shows. She has a podcast called One Real Good Thing with Ellie Krieger, and of course she has lots of recipe books out and a Substack called Ellie's Real Good Food. And she's also a James Beard Award winner, so you can find her full information about her on her website, elliekrieger.com, ELLIEKRIEGER.com, and we'll be posting that in the show notes. But so excited to have you on the show.
Tammy, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm so glad I'm your favorite. Yay.
Indeed. I remember watching your show many, many moons ago when I was just a youngster on the Food Network, and I loved it. I'm not very good in the kitchen, but I still love your show. But I'd love to kick off with, how did you find your path to becoming a registered dietitian and nutritionist and becoming a chef?
Well, gosh, it's been a long path, actually, but I like the way my mom sums it up. And, you know, your mom knows you best, right? So my mom says that me becoming a dietitian is like a pyromaniac becoming a firefighter. So clearly, I have always loved food from the minute I popped out. Really, I've always sort of been interested in food, really since I was a baby and throughout my whole life. And gosh, the short story of it is I was pre-med in college, but I majored in nutrition because I loved food and it fulfilled all of the science requirements for pre-med. But as I was studying nutrition, I was like, whoa, blown away by the depth and breadth of the field. I really had no idea at the age of 18 as a freshman in college, all that really nutrition was, that it's not just biochemistry and nutrients, which it certainly is that, but it's also psychology and sociology and politics and agriculture. And it really spans everything. And when I realized how critical it was and how much I loved being immersed in it, I decided, oh no, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a dietitian. And so then I pursued that path. And I particularly went on to pursue the path as a dietitian working in the media, because I went on to get my master's degree in nutrition education with a minor in journalism. So I'm doing exactly what I was hoping to do. And I'm so blessed to do it.
That's excellent. I'm excited also about the various things you have on your website, including a series of articles. One of them that I love is your usually, sometimes, rarely lists. I feel like it's a great no-nonsense place for people to start sort of gathering resources to try and build healthier habits or even expand on what they're already doing. So, there will be links in the show notes, but I was just wondering, how did you decide to come up with that? Where was the need there?
I have to say this, usually, sometimes, rarely, these lists of food is pivotal. It's absolutely pivotal to what I do. And I didn't necessarily know that it would be when I first came up with them. So I used to work with clients one-on-one. I haven't for many years now, but I did for a while. And I found that, people had a lot of difficulty with anything that wasn't the extremes, like everything has to be all or nothing. Otherwise, they couldn't wrap their head around it, really. And the truth of eating well is that it doesn't live in the extremes. It lives in that middle place where there's no such thing as never. For me personally, the word never makes me want something 1,000 times more. Like if someone told me that I couldn't have chocolate cake, I like chocolate cake and I have some now and then and I move on and it's not that important to me. It doesn't take up space in my head. I enjoy it. I move on. But if someone told me I could never have it, I would be obsessed with chocolate cake. I would want nothing more than chocolate cake. If I had one bite, I would suddenly eat the whole chocolate cake. So I feel like this notion of never, or the extremes that we get into, and I think this wasn't only with my clients at the time, but is with our society. We tend to really get into these big extremes, these swings, and partly the media, which I'm a member of. So I say this knowingly, partially the media is to blame for this, for perpetuating this, which we can talk about. But anyway, I came up with these lists to help people kind of see that there is no all or nothing, but there's shades of gray in between, right? Most truths are shades of gray anyway. So that usually if your diet is defined, how well you're eating is defined by what you do usually. So if you're usually eating the usually foods, which are the ones you would expect, fruits and vegetables, minimally processed, whole grains, healthy fats, seafood, lean meats, things like this. If you're mostly eating that, then that's your usually. And then sometimes, you know what? I'm going to have a baguette and sprinkle in. I want to live my life being able to eat a baguette or a slice of pizza on non-whole grain dough. Like, it's fine. And so you can sprinkle those in here and there, even daily, whatever, and it works if your usuallys are like the core. And then the rarelies are the foods that I think many chefs might use with a heavy hand, and many nutritionists might, or many quote unquote nutritionists, because the real nutrition, the real qualified people in this field don't say never. But influencers, people who are out there spouting fear, they might say never have bacon, never have chocolate, never have sugar. And the fact is that you can have a little, and just that's why that's in sort of the rarely column.
And that delves a little bit into another article that I really loved about comfort foods, how you said that, they don't have to be a guilty pleasure. You touched on the neuroscience, you touched on the social aspects, and help provide people with a well-rounded outlook. Would you mind speaking a little more to that topic?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the word guilt, I don't think should be used around food at all. I hate when people say, what's your guilty pleasure? That's sometimes a question I get from interviewers. Like, I don't believe in guilt. So there is no guilt to me. And I think this is the moralizing around food that we really need to get away from. It's not more a moral decision. Sometimes it is, I guess, food can be a moral decision if you're depriving people of food or you're doing something horrible. Well, that's a whole other topic, I guess, right now, as people are struggling with their not having SNAP benefits. So food can certainly be moral. But our personal food decisions are not moral decisions. It's food. So put it in its place in things. Okay. So no guilt around it. I really don't believe in that. And food's supposed to be pleasurable. And I think it's supposed to be comforting. This is often part of the conversation about nutrition that's missing from the narrative. And we need to bring it in because food's supposed to be flavorful and compelling and comforting and make us feel good. And the issue really becomes a problem when it's the only thing that's comforting and makes us feel good. We need a lot of tools in our toolbox. We can't just rely on food as the only thing that makes us feel good. Then we have a imbalance. But in balance with other things, it's supposed to make us feel good. If you think about the first moments of feeding as a child, it's in the arms of your caregiver. It's supposed to be this feel-good thing. And so I think we should not feel guilty about comfort food. And also we tend to have a very narrow definition of comfort food or a perspective of it as something very cheesy and gooey and rich and fried. And certainly those things are comfort foods. For me, French fries, I love them. Yeah. Or really gooey mac and cheese. They're comforting, but there are so many foods that are comforting that are, in the usually food column kind of thing. And for me, soup is there. Especially when the weather gets cold. What's better than a bowl of soup? And especially if it's soup that maybe you have history with. So much of our comfort comes from our personal memories, and food can evoke that. And it's such a beautiful thing. And it's such a healthy thing, actually, because a big healthy aspect of food is the social connection that it brings. And that's part of the comfort. That's part of what's making you feel good when you're eating a comfort. You're remembering a closeness, perhaps, or a happy time with others usually. So. And actually, going back to that, I also think we can create happy memories around healthy foods. And as a parent, when my daughter was young, I would try to do that with, say, apple picking, creating this time, creating these memories around healthy foods instead of necessarily, some fast food outing or something. So going apple picking and coming home and making this like fabulous applesauce or whatever things we felt like making with apples. But I feel like those opportunities to create memories that are healthy from a healthy place too.
And such great points too. And again, I love that you demystify it. I love that you provide a really healthy, well-rounded outlook, because I completely agree. Like, attaching guilt to food can be really damaging. Attaching reward to food can be really damaging too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, sort of in parenting, nutritional parenting, I'm not sure what the field is called, but in like, when you're feeding children, you really don't want to use food as a reward for things. You want to find other ways to reward them because it's really about being a little more intuitive about it. And you can plant these ideas in a child's head. What's so interesting, actually, to that point is that when we are babies, we're very intuitive eaters, right? We just eat. You can't force feed a baby. Like they stop eating when they've had enough. Now, when you get to be about 5 years old, children start to respond to these external cues. Like if you say, oh, you did so great, you ate so great, you finished your plate. Or you start to respond to external cues of maybe like, oh, if you eat that, you're going to get fat or whatever. So those types of messages you really have to tap into, and it can help you take a look. It's a mirror in a way, because it can really help you take a look at your own biases in food and trying not to create those kinds of cues for a child is really important.
Again, one of the reasons why you're my favorite celebrity chef is the fact that you're a registered dietitian and nutritionist. What would you say within that role is one of the most unique aspects that you bring to the work?
Well, I would say, and there are more now than there used to be, but I think the whole culinary aspect of nutrition was like less established when I first started. There weren't that many nutritionists. I would have to say there were many dietitians who I think came at food from a very controlled perspective, not a very food-loving perspective. And there were certainly some, and there was in the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the national organization of dietitians. There was a organization called Food and Culinary Professionals, which I then, gravitated toward immediately. And this group of people that were doing this, but I've seen since I've been a dietitian, which is since 1994, hello, you probably, I don't know if you were born then, but since then, I've really seen a growth of dietitians who care deeply and are passionate about food and culinary arts, I guess you could say, or food and cooking, as opposed to having this like general fear or control mindset around food, which I think was more predominant when I first started out. So, but I think I've brought some of that to the table, honestly. And I'm really thrilled to be able to kind of be this bridge between chef world and nutrition world. And I think we need it because I think it's often seen as like competing forces, and it absolutely is not. And I think the world has definitely changed in the past even 10 years, where most people see chefs doing amazing things with vegetables. I mean, 20 years ago, you didn't see chefs doing amazing things with vegetables. They were more of an afterthought.
Yeah. I'd love to pivot back to comfort foods. You'd mentioned some of your favorite French fries, also definitely like one of my absolute favorites. Are there any other comfort foods that you absolutely love, especially the fact that the holidays are around?
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely like chicken soup. I mean, soup in general for me is just like one of those, there's no such thing as soup season even for me, because I make a different soup every single week. Even in the summer, I'll make like gazpacho or chilled zucchini soup or something. But there's something about the winter and the cold that you just want that like bowl of soup. But I also love chili, and I love one pot kind of cooking. And actually my latest book is Hole in One, WHOLE, and it's complete meals in one skillet, sheet pan, or pot, basically. And I love stews. I just love cooking in one big pot because there's so much you can do, and you can kind of tweak the flavor as you go. And then to get one bowl of something just like fabulously warming and soft and comforting with maybe some fresh garnish, I just love that.
That sounds great. And then there's less cleanup because it's only one pan or a bowl, right?
Oh, exactly. Trust me, that was a major factor in that, even though my husband is the one who always cleans up. So I'm just being kind to him, honestly.
Yeah. I'm actually one of those people who I get pretty anxious in the kitchen when it comes to cooking. So having recipes that you have only one pot to worry about, fabulous. So I'm looking forward to picking that up.
What do you get anxious about?
Oh my goodness, everything. I'm always reading the directions like 10 times over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's one of the things that kind of prevents people from cooking often, and it's just like anything else. Like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it and the better you get at it. And so I feel like people often feel intimidated in the kitchen. And I think sometimes they just put too much pressure on themselves. And you might appreciate this and maybe you'll adopt it. You're welcome to. But sometimes I get anxious also, not in my everyday cooking, but I do a recipe every week for my column in the Washington Post. And when I develop these recipes, I think about them so deeply and so much before I even get into the kitchen. So by the time I get into the kitchen, I'm like thinking about 1,000 different things that I might want to change or I might want differently. And I get worked up. I get totally nervous and stressed out that it's not going to be good. And so I started saying, how bad could it be? I started saying it so often, how bad could it be, that my assistant was joking that we should put that as like the sign in my kitchen, as like the official motto of my kitchen. How bad could it be? And the truth is that if you put some care into it and you use good ingredients, how bad could it? It's going to be probably pretty good. And you could probably fix it if it's not perfect. I mean, certainly for my recipe testing, I do. But I feel like that just like takes the edge off a little because we don't have to be perfect. And that actually comes back to the whole nutrition conversation. That's another thing that I think people do to themselves from a nutrition point of view is that they're striving for some like unattainable, and actually there's no such thing as perfection in the way you eat. But I think people strive for that. And it winds up being, the thing that like messes everything up is this striving for perfection. And that comes back to the usually, sometimes, rarely, that there's no such thing as perfection. And the same thing with cooking. Like there's always something new to learn. Everyone makes mistakes. Even the best chefs in the entire world mess it up. And that's how you learn,
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. And yeah, it's true. I guess if you're using really good ingredients and you're being mindful and you're cooking with care and love, like it might just turn out to be even better than you think.
Actually, there's that too. Totally.
Yeah. So you also have a podcast. I haven't actually tuned in yet, but I'm really looking forward to doing that. And I'm curious, from one podcaster to another, what's one of your favorite part about being a podcaster?
Oh, gosh. So my podcast is called One Real Good Thing. And every episode is about one thing you can do right now to make your life better. And what I love about this in particular is each episode has a guest, and I learn so much. I learned so much from each guest. And I just love being in a state of constant learning personally. I feel like it's just my credo for life. And I've learned so much from my guests. And particularly, I mean, in the food world, I have interviewed a lot of amazing chefs and researchers and people, just really thought leaders in the field. I feel a little more connected already with that. But also, my podcast dives into not just nutrition, but what I consider the three-leg stool of wellness, which is food and nutrition, activity, and being just an active person who moves and is out in the world doing activities. So I don't like the word exercise necessarily because it doesn't have to even feel like exercise. And then also lifestyle things like stress reduction, things like that, getting enough sleep. So when I've spoken with people in these other fields, in the field of activity and exercise, and in the field of and movement, and in the field of just other lifestyle things, I've learned so much. And I just love exploring all of those things.
Excellent. In terms of cooking, what is something that you've learned the most across your entire career so far?
I guess one of the things I've learned, and it comes back to, I guess, what we're talking about. This might sound funny, but I guess I've learned to be gentle with yourself. And I think, sometimes, especially if you put a lot of pressure on yourself with things, just being a little gentle with yourself, like almost treating yourself, judging yourself as you would if you were your best friend. I think that kind of helps to see yourself with kind eyes and to see your work with kind eyes. I think that that is something that I've learned. And I think that sometimes our inner critic, that not kind person, hampers our creativity. And I feel like I get inspired by seeing artists who are, being themselves in the most genuine way. And you can't really do that unless you are giving yourself grace and being your own best friend in that way.
That's excellent. And, so true. So true. And I love how you connect it to creativity because, cooking is creative and embarking on anything where you're making something is very creative. But like you said, you have to give yourself grace. There's no such thing as the perfect product, the perfect meal. And, the process itself can be really messy, like beautiful, but messy, and literally messy in the kitchen,
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And to be honest, one of the things I really don't like, I don't know why I'm mentioning this, but is like competitive cooking. Like there's so much competitive cooking in the media right now. And then I go to these events and they're like, we're going to have a contest. I'm like, I don't want to have a contest. I don't want to compete. I want to share. And I feel like I would love to get to a place. And I think most society works like this. Like we're not necessarily competing with each other. We're in the kitchen, we're sharing meals and we're sharing ideas and we're having, a glass of wine and cooking together and swapping ideas and so on. And I think that's the part of cooking that I really like the community aspect of it. And I feel like the competitive aspect interferes with that kind of.
I was curious, what's one of your favorite parts about the creative process, whether it's coming up with the recipe or, what have you?
Yeah. So it's funny because I just did a talk. I did the keynote this year at the annual convention of the Academy of Dietetics. It was like a huge honor for me. I was really excited and I obsessed about this for 4 months. But my talk was about cultivating a creative mindset and how it can make you a happier person and a better dietitian. And I really dove into some research about it. And it really is incredible how creativity, and even whether you're creating something yourself or you're even observing art and creativity, if you go to listen to music or you're reading a book or you're going to a museum, even consuming art makes you happier. It's really amazing. And it's through this communal, it's largely, or at least in part, through this human connection that it fosters. So it comes back to cooking. So I think for me, the creative process, it's one thing about food and creating recipes is that it's so sensual. You're thinking about the look. You're thinking how it looks on the plate. Is there color? Is it, maybe I want it to be just 2 colors, green and white everywhere, different shades. What do I want it to look like? I want to have different textures. So besides taste and different taste elements, you want to think about a crunch and a soft part and a fresh part. And so there's this sort of feel element to it. And then of course, aroma. So I love the sensory aspect of cooking and creating a recipe that incorporates all of those things. And P.S. then does it with healthy ingredients. And then, that's like a bomb. And actually, I'm going to add one more thing to that I love. Is that then I want to make it really doable for people. Like it's one thing to be super creative and create some fabulous thing that takes 10 hours to make and nobody's going to make it because nobody freaking has time to do that. That's one thing. That's not what I do. I really want something that people are going to feel like, hey, I can do this on a Wednesday and it's not that hard because frankly, those are the kinds of foods I want. And as a nutritionist, as a dietitian, you could know the entire encyclopedia about nutrition. You can memorize it. But if you don't change anything, if you don't change what you're doing, then it doesn't matter if you know it or not. It's in the doing. So I'm thinking, how do I get people to do this? And it's by giving them recipes that like draw them in, that they feel like they can do. And then once they do it, they're like, whoa, that was like affordable and doable and delicious. I'm doing that again. And now all of a sudden you changed. So that's my mission. And what I look for in the creative process is like bringing together all of those things.
I really love that. And congrats on giving the keynote.
Thank you. It was amazing. It was like 3,000 people, but it feels like family to me because, I've been a member of this organization for so long. I have so many friends in the audience, not 3,000 friends. So I certainly didn't know everybody, but it was incredible. And it was really great to explore, to have the opportunity to even dive deep into this topic that I'm really passionate about.
I wanted to touch on a more serious subject. What is something that you find is one of the biggest issues that face people today regarding eating healthy? And I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be just in the United States. It could be globally even.
I would say misinformation, the rampant amount. I mean, there's an insane amount of misinformation, and there always has been, honestly. There's always been, I think it was Mark Twain who's credited for saying this. I'm not sure he said it, but something like a lie is halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And now that lie's been around the world 10 times before the truth gets its boots on. I mean, that lie has gotten like traction. It's a really big problem. And I think there's and two things that get a lot of clicks is fear and outrage. And so there are many people propagating fear and outrage. And what's interesting and then of course, they have something to sell you to solve the problem that's causing you the fear and outrage that they've introduced. And so this is like a system that I see, but it really gets to people. And partially because a lot of these people propelling this misinformation have, you go on their website and they're maybe even a doctor or something, and they seem legit, and they might have links to research. And there's usually, and the hard part of it, and why it can be so confusing, is because a lot of times their claims are based on a seed of truth. So maybe there's a rat study on 10 animals from 50 years ago or something that showed something, but has been since disproven because that mechanism doesn't exist in humans or whatever. They'll show you that rat study and base their entire fear mongering on this. And so I'm seeing this. I combat this a lot in my Substack newsletter. There's a free version where I provide recipes every week. And then on the paid version, I dig really deep into these and look at the research. And so I just did one, for example, on, are oats really good for you? Because there's all this fear mongering around oats. And I just break it down into like, this is what they're saying. And this is kind of why they're saying it, and the seed of truth. And this is the reality. And so I think that's the biggest problem, is people are confused and frustrated, and they're being fed fear and outrage and mistrust of the science. And I think this is going to be a big problem. Like, I see this as like a building problem. And I partly see it as part of my role is to help, like, take a collective deep breath, come with me, and let's take a look at this.
And I definitely appreciate your advocacy in that area as well, especially with the advent of AI and the fact that, of course, the internet, you can find anything to support just about any claim. It's just a matter of where is someone going to look, what rabbit hole are they going to jump down. So again, on behalf of everyone, I appreciate your advocacy and wanting to shed light and truth surrounding food and nutrition. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. And I feel like I have, over the years, really earned people's trust. And I have to say, it's the single most important thing to me is people's trust. And I take it really seriously. And sometimes we don't know the answer to something. And I think we need to be able to say, oh, we don't know the answer. And that's a fair answer sometimes. And the internet doesn't allow for any of that. I feel like very often there's no, again, coming back to these shades of gray. Sometimes the story is just a little bit more complicated, but still understandable if you can just allow for some nuance.
Excellent. A couple more questions. One is, do you like to cook with music on?
Oh, yeah, I do. And I especially like reggae type music. I mean, I like all kinds of music, but I really love to listen to kind of reggae. It just puts me in the right mood. So yeah, absolutely. I love music, and that's something that really can make a difference for me, from sometimes at the end of the day, from dinner prep feeling like a chore and a hassle to feeling like, all right, this is good. I'm just going to get into it.
Nice. Do you ever theme the music around the kind of dish that you're making?
I not knowingly anyway. Yeah, although that's kind of a cool idea. play, like some Polish polka or something when I'm making I don't know, some cabbage dish or something.
Yeah. So one final question. This is a fun one. If you could have dinner with any person, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would you do for dinner?
Oh my gosh. It would be my grandma that I never met because I'm named after her. She died actually on my parents' honeymoon, but I'm named after her, and she was like the matriarch of the family, and I would cook with her. I want to cook. I would cook next to her, and I would want her to show me how she cooks. And I think I have some of her recipes already that I use. And but I would love to actually have the experience of cooking with her and eating with her. So I would pick my grandma.
Oh, that's wonderful and so sweet. Yeah. And, family recipes, hearkening back to one of the beginnings of our conversation, such, there's heritage there, there's memory, there's comfort,
Totally. And there's like this connection, It's funny because part of my family was from Austria, and my like great grandparents. So I haven't even met them, or I didn't necessarily feel an Austrian connection in my life, but I was in Vienna on a work trip, and I went to this restaurant and ate some traditional food, this like sauerbraten type of dish. And I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like home to me. It was really weird. It struck me in a very deep way. And I think sometimes you can really connect with it sounds almost woo-woo, possibly a little, but I do think there's something there that's like a deep connection that food can bring to like bridge generations. And it's funny because my mom often says that I ignore tradition. And it's interesting. I've talked on my podcast with another chef, Eric Kim, about this. It's one thing to stick to tradition and honor tradition. It's one thing to honor tradition, but I feel also that creative right to kind of play around with it. And he does too. So I think, she says, I know what phrase I was looking for. My mom says, I thumb my nose at tradition, but I don't. I just like to kind of be creative with traditional recipes. So honoring them, but also putting your own self into them, I think is like the purest form of honoring them, because you're really embracing them into your life today. So I have an interesting relationship with traditional foods. I love them. And then I also like to explore. And I feel like we should all feel free to do that.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, please check the show notes for where you can find and connect with Ellie regarding her shows, her books, her podcast, and more.
Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal. We hope today's episode left you feeling inspired. This podcast is independently created and produced by the host, Tami Takaishi. More details about today's guest can be found in the show notes, along with links to the podcast's socials, merch store, and ways to support arts organizations AHA Broadway and New Normal Rep, both near and dear to Tammy's heart. Don't forget to visit creativepiecemeal.com, the official podcast website, where you can leave fan mail, write a review, explore Tammy's blog, and discover the growing collection of episodes. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Alex Rapetti. Additional narration by Dante Jace. Let's keep celebrating creativity in all its forms.